Hello students, this is video 2.11. The unit title is Logic Lines, and the objectives are students be able to justify lines are perpendicular, and students be able to determine if the equations and graphs of perpendicular lines given a point and an equation. Alright, let's go flippers. So what we want to talk about first is the idea of what perpendicular lines are, and here are 4 specific facts about perpendicular lines. The first is that perpendicular lines are lines that intersect at one point. So if we look at these lines intersect at one point and one point only. So that's one condition of being perpendicular. There are also lines that have a negative reciprocal slope. And I've talked about this a bit in class. What I mean by negative reciprocal is if we look at the slope of this line, which is negative 1/2, and we look at the slope of the line below it, which is 2, then those two slopes, if we take them and multiply them together, 1/2 times 2, which is really 2 over 1, we will get negative 2 over 2, which is equals negative 1. That's what it means to be a negative reciprocal. It means if we start off with one value, right, and this is a slope, and we take that and we flip it over, so we flip negative 1/2 and make it 2, and then we switch the sign from negative to positive, then we will get negative 1. So the slopes of perpendicular lines, m1 times m2, their product is equal to negative 1. And this is always true about perpendicular lines, is that they have one solution when put in a system of equations. So if we were to make this a system of equations, which you did last year, then we'd actually be able to find the solution, right? The solution would be the point of intersection. For this particular set of lines we're looking at, the solution would be 0, 0, because that's where they intersect. Finally, our last piece of information is that the lines form 4 right angles. So if these are perpendicular lines, then these angles here must be right angles, and that's denoted by the little boxes in the corner. Let's look at a set of perpendicular lines. We can see right away they're perpendicular. Why? Because if we look at their slopes, one slope is 2, the other slope is negative 1/2. We know that multiplies together to give us negative 1. So just by looking at their slopes, we know they're perpendicular. We could also look at the rise of the run, and we'd be able to figure out that these angles here are actually 90 degrees. We could use a protractor and measure them. We see that they intersect at one point. Again, all the things that make lines perpendicular. Well, let's look at example 1. Example 1 says line EF contains points E, which is negative 4, 3, and F, 3, negative 1. And line GH is defined by the equation 5x minus 4y equals negative 7. Which statement is true? Is the statement true that EF is parallel to GH? EF is this symbol here, means perpendicular. So is it perpendicular to GH? Is line EF and line GH, are they the same line? Or do EF and GH intersect but are not perpendicular? So this question is really about slope. It's asking us, can we look at line EF, find its slope, look at line GH and find its slope, and compare the two? So first we need the slope of both lines. First thing I'm doing is finding the slope of EF, right? And I'm taking my y sub 2 minus my y sub 1. Here's my y sub 2, here's my y sub 1, over my x sub 2 minus my x sub 1, right? And that's going to give me m, which is my slope. My slope is negative 4 over 7, so that's the slope of line EF. Now I want to find the slope of line GH. Now that's given to me in a different form. Here's this equation of that line. Well, I need to take this equation and solve it for y, just like I normally would, to figure out what the slope is, so I can get in the slope-intercept form. So now algebraically, so you can see the steps, because some of us are kind of rusty at this. So I subtract 5x from both sides. And I get negative 4y equals negative 5x minus 7. Now I divide both sides by negative 4, which gives me y, right, because these cancel out, equals negative divided by negative here, right, is going to give me a positive. So I'm going to get a positive 5 over 4 x, and then minus 7 over 4. Well, that's positive, right? Because there was another positive or negative divided by negative, so that also became positive. Makes the slope of this line, m, is going to be 5 over 4. So let's just circle our two slopes that we found. The first one was negative 4 over 7, and the second one was 5 over 4. Now, I keep saying m, m, m. Remember, y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope. So this question is all about slope. If lines are parallel, then their slopes are going to be the same. Are these slopes the same? No. So these can't be parallel. So that means 1 is wrong. Now, if lines are perpendicular, then their slopes multiply to give me negative 1, which means they're the opposite reciprocal of each other. So that would mean that negative 4 over 7 times 5 over 4 will give me 1. Well, no, it doesn't. It gives me negative 20 over 28, and that doesn't even reduce to 1. So this is also wrong. Now, these lines can't be the same line because they'd have to have the same slope. So they are also not the same line. But these lines are going to intersect. Now, they're not perpendicular, but they will intersect because, again, they don't have the same slope, so they're not perpendicular, but they're not parallel. But they are going to have some point where they cross. We just don't know where. Here's our next question. It says, what is the slope of a line perpendicular to y equals 3/4 plus 1? So again, we find our slope. M equals here 3 over 4. That's my slope. So I want the slope of a line perpendicular. So I need to take this number, this slope. I want to flip it. Flipping it will make it 4 over 3. And I want to negate it. It's positive, so let's make it negative. So we're looking for an answer where the slope is negative 4/3. And that would be, of course, choice 2. Okay, so let's look at number 3 here. Number 3 says, the equation of a line is 3y plus 7x equals 5. What is the slope of a line perpendicular to the line given? So step 1 is to actually find the slope of this line. So we're going to take 3y plus 7x equals 5, and we're going to solve it for y. Our slope, once we solve for y, is negative 7/3, so m equals negative 7/3. But they don't want a slope of this line. They want a slope of a line perpendicular, so I'm going to use a little symbol. That would mean flip this over, 3 over 7, and negate the sign. It's negative, so it's positive, so our answer is 3 over 7. Here is question number 4. It says, line H passes through 0, 5, and 4, 1. Graph the line that is perpendicular to the line and passes through point 2, 3. So I'm actually going to modify this and not have you graph it, but I'm going to have you just write the equation, and your work will pretty much explain itself. So the line passes through 0, 5, and 4, 1. So that means, again, we need to figure out what the slope of this line is, and that will help us figure out what a perpendicular slope would be. So I've got 0, 5, and 4, 1. I'm going to take the y2, which is 1, and subtract 5 from it, because that's my y1. I'm going to take my x sub 2, which is 4, and subtract 0. And I'm going to get my slope of that line, which is negative 4 over 4, which is negative 1. And we'll just put negative 1 over 1 so that we can actually have a denominator and a numerator. So now I want to take the new slope, which is going to be perpendicular. So that means we need to now add in that the new slope, right, the slope of a line perpendicular, excuse me, would be, we're going to take this and flip it. Well, negative 1 over 1, if you flip it, it's still 1 over 1, but the sign will be positive, okay? So our slope is going to be a positive 1, basically. And now it wants to know, well, it has to fall through this point. So it has to go through the point 2, 3. So we're going to take our y equals mx plus b, and we're going to plug in what we know. We know the slope of the line perpendicular, it's 1. The x is going to be 2. Y is 3. I'm taking this right from this point that they gave us. They said it has to go through there. And we're looking for the y-intercept. So plus b. So if I solve this for b, subtract 2 from both sides, I'm going to get b equals, oh my gosh, 1 again. So this equation is now y equals, again, the slope of the line perpendicular is what we want. And that's going to be 1, a positive 1, x, plus our y-intercept, which is 1 also. So here is our final secret hot question. It says the equation of a line is 5y plus 10x equals 5. What is the slope of a line perpendicular to this line given? And what is the equation of a line perpendicular to the line above through this point? So that's a two-stepper. You have to look, find the slope, And then after you find the slope of the line perpendicular, you have to plug in this point to find your new equation. Good luck.